Down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid-lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. And I am your whiskey-drinking, politic-loving, opinionated host, Rick. And I see there might be a couple people out there. So first of all, I did a little work on my streaming computer, just so you know. So if I sound a little different, just let me know, because I had to take the entire thing apart. Funny, the good thing is, though, that I went ahead and when I did that, you know, my heat issues that I had from before that I was talking about a couple other episodes ago, I actually cleaned it all out with dust. I had forgotten, I keep talking about how I've done this broadcast for, a little over about a year and a half, 2 years now. I had forgotten that I actually got this computer slightly before I started the broadcast. And so it honestly is, it was built for another purpose, but I went ahead and ran it with this one. And so, yeah, it's been a couple years since I've taken it apart and actually cleaned it out. There was a little bit of dust in there. There were some dust, I'll say dust mice, not necessarily moose, but dust mice that were showing up in the fans. And so I cleaned it out, and it looks like things are running a little cooler tonight. So this is cool. Not to mention the fact that, it's still hot in the studio. Don't get me wrong. It's still hot here. We had a couple days where we had some cooling off. The weather is back to in the 70s, mid 70s, that kind of thing. So anyway, the point being is that I hope that I've gotten away from any kinds of issues, for stuff. I want to give a shout out to a few people here. I see a bunch of people up on Rumble, Buddy Weiser, Dave's Cave, Mama Five Kitties. I see Amy Jean Viner. I also see on Facebook, I see Becky from my Australian contingent. And great. It looks like B. Patrick 1369 has showed up because that I have your question for this evening. And then over on the YouTube, I see I have Justice. I'm going to mince this up. I think it's Janie. I'm going to make a guess. I'm going to make a guess at that. It's spelled a little differently than I'm used to. But anyway, welcome one, welcome all. I don't know. I know several of my listeners may not be on Facebook, but I got a notification this morning that said that I have hit 100 followers on Facebook. And this is a milestone for me. This is great. It is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast page over on Facebook. That was awesome. I also know that I have, around 220 on Rumble, about 74 over on YouTube right now. So I am running just under 400 consistent subscribers, and I appreciate every single one of you. I appreciate all of you out there, even if you don't go and subscribe, although I would really appreciate a subscription. That would be great, especially if you could hop over to Rumble. Rumble is the place to be. You can sign in over there. It's all free. And then, of course, subscriptions are free as well. There's nothing there as far as money is concerned for that. I don't make any money off of this, to be honest with you. But it is what it is. We'll see what happens as things go along. I'm hoping to eventually grow this into a point where, maybe I can be doing this on a regular basis and then expand some of the broadcasts instead of just Wednesday and Saturday nights. Speaking of that, Wednesday night, just as a little teaser, I have a special celebrity pet for the pet of the week. on Wednesday. So Wednesday night, if you have the opportunity, it's 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Come on over, watch the live stream, and you can take a look at which celebrity pet I have on tap for the Celebrity Pet of the Week. Also, for those of you who are on Android devices, I caught today that they actually have a pre-registration in the Google Play Store. So there's a pre-registration portion in the Google Play Store. So for those of you who are after Truth Social and are not on the iDevices, you can now get it on your Android, not through just the web interface, but now they actually, looks like they're in the pre-release of an actual Android app itself. So you can go to the Play Store. I did it. You can go to the Play Store, you can pre-register, and then when it becomes available, you'll be able to download it, or it will download directly for you. All right. So tonight I am drinking proper number 12 for the glass this evening. And I went ahead and put a really big, one of my nice, I don't know if anybody's ever used these before, but they're like a big, huge ice ball, and they're a pain in the butt to get out of the molds that I have. The mold that I have is a singular mold. And so it basically allows me to just do one at a time, which is kind of cool, but they're a pain in the butt to get out of. It splits in the middle and it kind of open it up. And sometimes it comes out on the right side where I can use the filler rubbery part to kind of push it out. Sometimes it doesn't, and I have to do some things, but they're like about a 2-inch ball, and I put one in, and I've already like melted probably about half of it, and I only put it in like half an hour ago. So that just gives you an indication in terms of the room temperature of the room. I've been looking at a couple other brands to maybe see if I can find one that actually is a little easier to work with. I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet, but we'll see what happens. But anyway, that's what I've got in my glass tonight is proper number 12. And of course, when I drink, I think. So let me go ahead and think about my affiliate for tonight. And tonight is the Institute on the Constitution. And they were established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.whiskeymusings.online, to sign up, and while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. They've got a lot of great books. I'm telling you, they got a lot of great books there. My affiliate link, once again, is IOTC. That's India Oscar Tango Charlie .whiskeymusings.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.whiskeymusings.online, and Whiskey Musings is all lowercase, all one word. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution, take a look at this. This is rounded edges. It's got a nice, about 1/8 of an inch Saddleback leather. The pages inside are water resistant, and check out that binding. It is actual thread that goes all the way through the book. They have a 100-year warranty against issues with manufacturer defects and materials, and it's a good keepsake item. But if you want to just purchase that and help support the show, then of course go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online, and that will drop you right to the page where the Constitution is at. Go check them out today, and I appreciate them for allowing me to be an affiliate with them. They are a wonderful organization, and by the way, for those of you who have signed up for the class, for the Constitution class, I promise I'm getting it to you. I've just had things keep popping up. I've had a slight change in my standard work hours and stuff. I'm hoping to get an email out within the next couple of days with some of the more intricate details as to what's going on with that. So I apologize for that. And, I'm slacking here. I've dropped the ball. And it's not the best, view for us, but all right. So tonight is Saturday. Saturday night, we go to On This Day in American History. And of course, for this segment, we read from the American Patriots Almanac, which is an awesome book. If you get a chance, it's by William Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. If you get an opportunity to pick this book up, it's got a lot of little bits and pieces of history, and it's U.S. history, and it's just fabulous. One thing that I did notice, I keep talking about how many copies of the Constitution that I have running around here. Well, it turns out that I actually have one inside this book as well, because between each month, there are bits and pieces of other things with things on the flag, things on different parts of history that don't necessarily break out into a specific date or timeline. But one thing that I did notice is in between July and August, check that out, they actually have written the Constitution of the United States in here along with the amendments. So in between, like I said, in between each month, when you transfer months, there are other pieces of history and historical facts in there. And it's a really, like I said, it's a really good book if you get a chance. I picked it up off of Amazon a little while ago, but you can get it where pretty much all booksellers are sold. All right, so tonight is August 6th, and we're going to talk about Hiroshima. By the summer of 1945, it was becoming clear that the Allies would win World War II in the Pacific, but it was also clear that Japan intended to make it a long, ghastly fight. Some U.S. war planners feared that as many as 300,000 Americans could die in an invasion of the Japanese home islands, where Japan had some 2.5 million regular troops. Japanese civilians, ready to fight with everything from bamboo spears and suicide bombs, prepared themselves with the slogan, 100 million will die together for the emperor and the nation. Thousands of planes stood ready for kamikaze missions. Japanese ground troops had already begun mass suicide attacks. Devastating American losses at Iwo Jima and Okinawa, the continuing unwillingness of the Japanese military to consider surrender, and the death each month of thousands of Allied prisoners held by Japan convinced President Harry Truman of the need to use the newly developed atomic bomb to end the war quickly. On August 6, 1945, a B-29 named the Enola Gay, which I actually found out that was the pilot's grandmother, I believe, dropped a single atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima. An intense flash gave way to a huge mushroom cloud that rose over the city, followed by a firewall that destroyed 5 square miles and resulted in 140,000 deaths. When the Japanese did not surrender, the U.S. dropped a second bomb on Nagasaki on August 9th. More than 70,000 people were killed instantly. An additional 75,000 were horribly injured, alerting the world to the nightmare of radiation poisoning. On August 15th, Emperor Hirohito called upon his people to endure the unendurable and surrender. In all the Allied countries, people burst forth in an outpouring of unrestrained joy. But with the celebrations came the sobering realization that the world would never be the same again. And that is today's On This Day in American History. And absolutely, that is just, it was horrific. I understand why it was done, but it was horrific in the act. And to be completely honest, it ushered in a form of war that started the Cold War in the 80s. And we are now looking at a possibility of a regime that is completely against America and its allies in the form of Iran. I talked about that in a couple episodes back, where they have turned on more centrifuges. They are looking at enriching uranium at a much faster pace, a much larger set than what they had originally anticipated. And so, yeah, we're in an extremely dangerous situation here. We also have a nuclear power. Russia going after Ukraine and openly talking about tactical nukes. We also have China looking at going after Taiwan. And while Taiwan does not have tactical nukes, China does have nuclear weapons. And then, of course, the U.S.'s interests in Taiwan, based off of Nancy Pelosi's visit, might exacerbate the situation. I actually have a couple of articles for tonight in that. But first, I want to talk about what was supposed to be voted on today was the Inflation Reduction Act. It's not, under any circumstances, does it do anything to reduce inflation. Forget what Manchin and God, I just lost his name. I know it is. Forget what the Democrats are telling you, okay? It is not going to reduce inflation. In fact, I have an article in here in just a minute that has a lot of people who are saying the exact same thing, and not just Republicans. The thing about this bill is that it's going to increase taxes. It's going to increase spending. It's going to increase, pretty much the two things that are causing causing issues and causing inflation. And where they get the idea that just because they are supposedly reducing the deficit, and thank you very much. Thank you, B. Patrick, for that. Schumer, you are correct. I couldn't think of his name. I could see his face, the little Weasley eyes with the, glasses down at the end of the hawkish nose. But anyway, I could see him, but I couldn't think of him. Anyway, thank you. But the thing about it is that there were a couple more hurdles that had to get thrown over. Now, Wednesday, I had talked about how Christian Cinema was objecting to it. Her objections are actually pulled away. So even if Bernie Sanders, who came late to the party and was saying, "Hey, I want to object to this as well," even if Bernie Sanders decided to side with the Republicans, which won't happen, I'm going to tell you that right now, it won't happen. It still would pass muster, and it would still go through because there isn't enough to keep this from passing. However, there was one more hurdle that happened today, and actually it happened early in the morning, and that is the parliamentary review. Now, for those of you that don't understand, because this bill is a reconciliation, a budget reconciliation, there are rules that have to be followed. One of them has to be with regards to, you can't just carte blanche ask for more money. There are specific, and in fact, there are 3 specific places that you can ask to have a budget reconciliation. One is spending, the other is the debt, and the last one has to deal with revenue. And so because this bill has to fit somewhere in there, what we end up with a bunch of rules that wouldn't normally be in place if this were just a regular, average, everyday bill. But because it isn't a regular average everyday bill, we have to deal with things like parliamentary review. Now, apparently early this morning, 3:30 in the morning, apparently in Eastern time, the person who's in charge of the parliamentary review, her name is Elizabeth McDonough or McDonough, somewhere in there. Anyway, let me go ahead and just pop this up, because this came through, by the way, came through Politico, and the Senate parliamentarian kills a key policy in the Dem reconciliation bill. Now, I would love to say that it actually killed something like the IRS additional agents, the 87,000 additional agents. It didn't. What it did do is it actually she killed the key policy where the Dems were wanting to force drug companies, commercial drug companies, not Medicare, Medicaid, but private companies, to make it so that they couldn't raise the prices on their medicines higher than whatever the inflation rate was. And so it's this particular thing that that she basically said, no, you've got to rewrite that. That isn't possible, based on what she called the Byrd rule. And so I took a look, and I've already got it kind of highlighted right here in terms of the Byrd rule. So I didn't know necessarily what that was. And so I had to go and take a look. And what the Byrd rule was, and this is by, this is from, give me just a second. I want to make sure I get this. So this is from here we go. The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. Okay. So down here, the Byrd rule, I can tell you, starts off with, it was named after its chief sponsor, the late Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia, and it allows senators to block provisions of reconciliation bills that are extraneous to the reconciliation's basic purpose of implementing budget changes. Now, essentially, because of the fact that that particular piece was not part of budgetary changes, this is why she said, okay, this is going to violate the Byrd rule, because again, it has to be applicable to the existing budget. And so that's basically what it is. And so the idea that they could go and say, you know what, let's say Moderna or Pfizer or whoever creates these medicines, GlaxoSmithKline or any of those others, you can't raise your prices any higher in any one singular calendar year higher than the inflation rate. Now, the problem with that, or the challenge that we have with that, is the fact that a lot of the money that comes from that the Dems are actually calling out as budgetary cuts, and to be able to increase and pay down the deficit, a big chunk of that money, I think, let me go back here. It says that the inflation caps brought in about $100.7 billion of savings, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Now, how much that came from Medicare and how much came from the commercial insurance market, which is what this applies to, is unclear. But one estimate is saying that removing the that inflation cap part of the bill is going to cost roughly $40 billion in savings. So now what we're talking about is the Congressional Budget Office has now lowered its estimate of the total deficit reduction on the package by roughly $11 billion. So the quote unquote savings that this bill was supposed to give us is not as much as what they originally thought, because of the fact that they put this thing in there. Now they're going to have to rework it. So As far as I'm aware, there is no plan to have a vote on it this weekend. However, I could be wrong on that. I haven't really checked. I haven't really looked, so I don't really know for certain on that piece. But the point of all this is basically to, again, mention to all of you that what the Dems say, and actually even the Republicans do this too, but what a politician says is not exactly what they mean, okay? And they are essentially wrong on a lot of things. So one other thing that has happened a lot is the fact that we have so many people who are, and especially those that are on the right, like myself, like a lot of Republicans, we all have said that this is an inflation, not a Inflation Reduction Act. It actually is just a inflation act. And we're actually not alone. So let me show you this piece that came from the Political Insider. Apparently, there are over 230 economists who signed on to some sort of a letter that basically said that the Inflation Reduction Act will actually make inflation worse. Gee, surprise, surprise. And this came out yesterday in regards to that. And it's a letter signed by over 230 economists that were sent to both the House and the Senate. Now, if you actually remember and recall that several people within the Biden administration, when they were talking about inflation itself, were supposedly caught unawares that inflation was going to go up. And they essentially accused the fact that they were not informed. They were never told, so on and so forth. They came up with all kinds of excuses. Well, now I can tell you they have absolutely no excuse here, because this letter was transmitted, again, both to the House and the Senate, warning that this Inflation Reduction Act is actually not going to reduce it. It's actually going to make it worse. Gee. So now the thing is that this is not, these aren't like economic slouches who have sent this. These are not like, I don't know, the AOCs who say they have an economics degree, but yet can't figure out how pricing actually works in the real world. But these are some people like Nobel laureate Vernon Smith, who was the former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Kevin Hassett, former director of the Office of Management and Budget, Jim Miller, and former president of the Federal Reserve Board himself, Robert Heller. There's professors from the University of Chicago, Princeton, Duke, Virginia, Columbia, University of Notre Dame. So it's not just the right side, the right-leaning side that's actually talking about, because I can tell you any of those universities are not, they are far, far from being what you would consider right-wing. So this, again, goes back to the whole point that Biden is taking a big risk, and the Dems are taking a big risk by doing this thing and trying to push it through and not fully understanding exactly what it's going to do. They think it's going to lower the deficit, which is fine. It might make some deficit payments ahead of time. That's cool. But the deficit is not our problem. Inflation comes literally and simply put from too much actual cash chasing too few goods. So what they have to do is they have to dry up the supply of cash in order to lower inflation. And Reagan actually did that quite well back in the 80s after the disaster that was the Carter administration. And so what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with people who literally, and I even pulled this out actually a couple episodes ago, I talked about this, where the Biden administration itself in the White House, those people have collectively no more than about 2.5 years of actual business experience in the private sector all themselves. So these people are basically the blind leading the blind right now. You've got several people in Congress who have been there for multiple numbers of years trying to handle things and trying to do things from a business perspective. And they can't even do that, which is part of the reason why I believe having a business person in the presidency is a very, very good thing. Now, when we're sitting and talking about the other part of the bill, which was the addition of 87,000 new IRS agents, let me show you what that looks like. Okay. So 87,000 agents is going to, this I got actually from Senator Marsha Blackburn's Twitter account. Take a look at this. So the stuff on the left is the current size of the IRS department, which is 78,000 roughly plus employees. Then we have what the Democrats want is they want to increase essentially more than double the size of the IRS, increase their audit capability, and also increase their taxing power. Now, I understand a little bit of wanting to make sure that people are actually doing what they should be doing by paying their taxes, on time, making sure they're paying the right stuff, the right amount, et cetera, et cetera. But the funny thing about this is the only law enforcement agency that the Dems seem to want to increase here, because remember, the Democrats have all been talking about defunding the police, getting rid of the police, turning them over to social workers, things like that. The only law enforcement agency the Dems want to actually increase and provide funding for appears to be the IRS. So I guess in their mind, they seem to think that the IRS is the only legitimate law enforcement agency that deserves actual funding for law enforcement. It's a bit backwards, very backwards. But of course, that has to deal with the fact that all they want to do is tax, and spend. That's all they're looking for. Well, okay, so we're looking at this and we're saying, all right, this is, it's significant. It's doubling the size of the IRS. But how does this compare to some other three-letter agencies within the government? Well, this popped today, and this actually kind of shocked me a little bit. Apparently, if the Dems make the IRS larger and get what they want, which it looks like they're going to, it's actually going to make the IRS larger than the entire Pentagon, the State Department, the FBI, and the Border Patrol all combined, according to the Washington Free Beacon. So it's not only more than doubling just one agency's size, but it's also increasing it to where, let's see, four other agencies are combined, don't even make up that number. So this is an indication basically of where the Dems' priorities actually are. I mean, we pretty much already knew it. Okay, we already knew it. I get it. But still, this is really sad. This is extremely sad. Okay. And honestly, it is quite disappointing. Now, the funny thing about it is, as I said in my last episode, the whole idea that taxes were not going to touch anyone under $400,000 per year if they were married, well, that got thrown out the window too. I mean, you can take a look at my last episode. I've got a graphic, or I think I had a graphic in there that showed that. But yeah, it's going to hit almost every single tax bracket. Many of them, it's going to hit many of them, and most of them will be under the $400,000 mark. So what are we going to do? Well, I mean, honestly, there's nothing that we can do right now except look forward. We can look forward to 2022. There were several key races that have GOP or Republican candidates, good, strong Republican candidates. We can also look forward to 2024. We can look forward to what's coming up next. And of course, if you're watching the January 6th committee, The whole idea of January 6th is, of course, to keep one certain individual from running for the presidency again and potentially winning. And so, with all of that, we had TPUSA's Student Action Summit down in Florida, Tampa, Florida. For those of you that watch the Marquez show, you know that he and Hannah went on site and we're transmitting from that. Tonight, we have Texas CPAC, which is the Conservative Political Action Conference. And the funny thing is that when they ended it, okay, they did what essentially is a straw poll. Now, the Dems have been pitting this idea that Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis will be head to head in the Republican primary. And they keep talking about how Donald Trump is not going to win over Ron DeSantis. Well, first of all, let's just make this very, very clear. Ron DeSantis has publicly stated he is not looking forward to 2024 yet. The reason being, of course, is because he still has to get reelected in Florida as governor for 2022. He is focused on 2022 and getting reelected as the governor of Florida, the super governor of Florida. He is mum on anything else past that. Okay. Now, that being said, Donald Trump has hinted at running, but he has not come out and said it. And the reason for that has to deal with election laws and federal election campaign rules and regulations and so on and so forth. But doesn't matter that much in terms of the people's minds. We all want either one of them. In my mind, either one of them would be a good candidate for 2024. I personally actually think that Ron DeSantis has a potentially a better chance to resonate with some of the middle of the road, never Trumper idealists, because of the fact that he doesn't necessarily carry the same baggage as what Donald Trump does. That being said, though, I still think that Donald Trump, who is a businessman, remember what I said about the businessman, Donald Trump, who is a businessman, can actually run the country. And I would be excited to see what he can do with a actual all Republican Congress, rather than having to deal and duck and dodge with all of the crap that the Democrats created, spun up, fabricated, and threw at him. And look at what he ended up doing. He did a lot of really good things while he was in office, while ducking and dodging what the Democrats were tossing at him. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, the reason I'm talking about it is because of the fact that at CPAC, they do a straw poll at the end of the conference. And in this particular case, it was dealing with the the Republican Party's presidential nomination. It was a straw poll. And this just came out shortly before I got onto the air from Fox News. And it looks like Trump actually easily wins Texas CPAC 2024 GOP presidential nomination straw poll, with DeSantis being in second. Now, keep in mind, this is for 2024. This is not for 2028. Trump will not, if Trump runs and Trump wins in 2024, he will not be eligible for re-election in 2028 because of the two-term rule. However, it would be pretty smart and sweet for Ron DeSantis to actually get pulled into the 2028 election, because I really like him. I like him. I think he's a super governor. Like I said, he's super governor Ron DeSantis. I think he's the best governor in the United States right now. And I think that he could do quite well as president. And also because of the fact that he's been a governor, he actually has experience in the executive branch, unlike a lot of these senators who are trying to run for president, who only have their time in the legislative branch. Like, for an example, the current disaster that we have in terms of Biden. Okay, so Trump captured close to 70% of the ballots cast, and DeSantis received roughly 24. So this actually is a really good sign, because of the fact that, in most cases and most states, you have to be part of the political party in order to vote for the nominee within the primaries. Here in Washington, we actually abolish that. We do a top two. So whoever would win in the top two race would carry on. Of course, that wouldn't matter as far as the president is concerned, but as far as the rest of our elected representatives, it works that way. But anyway, so this was very, very interesting, and I wanted to bring that to you because it just popped. Again, like I said, right, 5 p.m. Eastern time, or 4:45 Eastern time, which would be 1:45 my time, and I just thought that very, very interesting to see that. Now, I've been spending a lot of time talking about Taiwan and China, because of the fact that as I've said before, I've said it, many, many times, 92%, over 90%, I believe the number is 92, but over 90% of the electronics throughout the entire world have some piece of Taiwan manufactured semiconductors in them. That is literally everything. Okay. Everything. So, to have China go and invade Taiwan and take them over puts the entire world's electronics at risk. Well, Nancy Pelosi went and visited Taiwan earlier this week. And while her visit is actually not clear as to its purpose, because she didn't really have a state purpose. I think that was obvious when Joe Biden came out and said, I don't think this is a good idea, regardless of the fact that he has actually no control of allowing her to visit wherever she wants, apparently. Although I seem to recall Trump basically saying that she couldn't use a plane at one point or a private plane at one point on the government's dime. But anyway, I'm not going to go anywhere with that. But the point is, though, that after her visit, China was pissed because China, of course, was telling people, hey, they did a kind of a veiled threat. We're going to shoot down Pelosi's plane. We're going to do all of these things. And while Pelosi's visit called them on their bluff, which I'm kind of like in that same boat. As far as I'm concerned, yeah, we should call their bluff, because that's just ridiculous that any other foreign power can tell us what to do. I don't think so. This country was not founded on the idea that somebody else could tell us what to do. But that being said, the actual purpose of her visit is very unclear. It wasn't apparently to go there and say, hey, we are going to stand in solidarity with you. We think that you should be independent, which, that was obviously taken out by the White House. We had all kinds of other messages that came out. And again, the entire visit turned into sort of a wishy-washy kind of a thing. And right after she left, China kicked off a lot of live fire exercises surrounding the island. Well, apparently now Taiwan has decided that they're not going to just sit idly by and let China do this. So take a look at this. This popped this morning from the Washington Examiner that Taiwan actually issues a chilling warning over China's attack drills. Now, supposedly, Taiwan has assessed what they are doing. And let me answer this for you. So Amy Jean Viner asks, I'm confused. Does the USA recognize Taiwan as an independent country or not? The answer to that is we did. At one time, we did recognize Taiwan as a separate country from China, but that has since been pulled back by the Biden administration. The Biden administration basically says that while they act independent, they are more in the category of like Hong Kong was prior to Chinese takeover. And that's essentially where Taiwan kind of was, even though they have their own, their own government, their own obviously economy and everything else. They essentially are considered for the most part a separate country, but they have never been formally recognized as a country outside of a few years ago that the Americans kind of said that they were looking at it. But it never has been 100% formally put into concrete, that it was its own separate country. And apparently, Buddy is adding to my comments and basically saying up until 1970, we did recognize them as a separate country before. Anyway, and yes, they apparently they do compete in the Olympics as a separate country. I mean, realistically, come on, folks. Even though they've never actually, gone to war and won their independence from China, they act as a separate country anyway. There shouldn't be any reason why, the whole world can't just say, you know what, you are your separate country. That just doesn't make any sense to me why they would still keep with this whole one China policy. But the Biden administration has its fingers, Hunter Biden has his fingers in with the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party, as you'll see a little bit more information on that coming out here in just a few minutes. All right. So Taiwan, issues the chilling warning saying that they've been watching the drills. And those drills apparently are looking like they are actual practicing for an invasion. And this is not surprising to me, to be honest with you. It really isn't. We all know that it's going to happen sooner or later. It's just a matter of when. And this, unfortunately, is a bad scenario. It is going to pull the U.S. into something that we may not want to for the good of the world. In specifics, and I can't imagine that Taiwan is going to last very long against China because honestly, it's sort of like David and Goliath. They are completely outmatched, and it will take a miracle for them not to be able, or for them to be able to take over China or to defeat China militarily without assistance of some kind, whether that comes in the form of U.S. help, Australian help, or other countries' help, or even an act of God by itself. It's going to be this is an extremely volatile situation. Well, in light of these kinds of things, the White House apparently summoned the Chinese ambassador, and in regards to diplomatic retaliation. Now, the diplomatic retaliation was basically China said, hey, we're not going to keep with our climate change initiatives. And they stopped essentially talking to the White House. This really doesn't surprise me any. Again, this is all political maneuvering. Things like this have happened quite often, but it doesn't do anything to lower the temperature of the situation or to ease some of the tensions of the situation over there. So this is something that we are going to have to watch very, very closely. I did talk about what the Chinese were doing, that they had indications in the ways that they were conducting themselves and some of the things that they've been doing. You'll remember I likened them to 1930s to 1940s Japan. So the World War II reference of the ending of the Pacific Theater was quite apropos, unplanned, but quite apropos. And Mark Levin actually on his podcast this past week did an extensive segment talking about the building of the acquisition of a potential Navy base in the Solomon Islands right off the coast of Australia. I already hit that as a part of one of my episodes. So that's I'm glad that I'm not just talking out my rear end when it comes to some of this. All right. So, all right. Now, one thing that is causing or presenting a bit of a monkey wrench in this entire thing here with the whole China connection is the fact that we have the Hunter Biden laptop that has demonstrated that the Chinese in the at least a single Chinese company, CEFC, has done business dealings with the president's son, Hunter. And so the question that keeps running around is, how compromised is Hunter? Well, a couple things happened this week that I think you should know. One of them was in the New York Post broke the story originally on the Hunter Biden laptop. And this just adds a little bit more to the situation, where Joe Biden apparently met with Chinese energy executives with ties to Hunter at the White House back in 2014. So one of the things that Joe Biden has been saying is he's been claiming over and over and over again that I know nothing of my son's business dealings. We've seen text messages that have come out. We've seen emails that have come out that apparently Joe at least had some sort of a peripheral vision into Hunter Biden's partners and communications. But this actually shows, and this is essentially from the White House logs. So we can guarantee pretty much that they are likely accurate. But the White House logs apparently show that he did meet with several Chinese energy execs who have ties to his son and business dealings. Now, unlike the whole Russian collusion thing, this is actual, factual, irrefutable evidence that has been produced to essentially show that Joe could very well be compromised, in as much as Eric Swalwell is compromised with Fang Fang. Okay, so we have now two known active politicians who have dealings with China and could very well be compromised. And I would say they need to fully be investigated, period. They just have to be. I don't know what everybody's waiting on. Honestly, if the DOJ was on their game, they would be looking into this completely. Oh, wait. Speaking about the DOJ, check this out. The FBI Director Wray apparently was on Capitol Hill this week and was questioned about the Hunter Biden laptop probe and questioned about China by some very strong Republicans such as Grassley and Cruz. And he has admitted to the fact that the FBI had some bias in basically saying right before the election in October, when the New York Post broke the story, that the following saying that it was disinformation, Russian disinformation, that was wrong. And so he got called to the carpet. Now, I wouldn't trust this guy any more than I could, any farther than I could throw him. And believe me, I'm a out of shape, heavy guy. I probably can't throw this man very far. So the reality of it is that the FBI made a huge error and also has been shown to sit on the laptop, has also been shown to sit on things like knowing about Hunter Biden's drug and prostitute addictions, as well as his incident where he had a weapon that was out of his control. The fact that the Secret Service kind of covered that up. And so we have now evidence, provable evidence in a court of law, not the January 6th debacle that's going on right now, but provable in a court of law. These things actually happened. We also at the same time have quid pro quo Joe standing sitting on a stage and saying clearly that he withheld aid to Ukraine until they got rid of a prosecutor who was looking into his son's business dealings. Whenever you watch Joe on a platform and he gets challenged on his son's business dealings, he goes ape crap. He stands up and tries to defend the man, which I'm not defend his son, which I'm not arguing against, because as a father, you want to defend your son. But as I've told my son, if you actually are doing something wrong and I find out about it, that's going to be a problem, because I am not going to support you if you are actually doing the thing that you're being accused of. So this is interesting, and in terms of, you know, how this is all going to work out. I don't know. It's going to be sort of interesting to see if the Republicans can win in 2022 and take back the House, and possibly the Senate, although that's not quite as sure as of right now. But fairly soon, I hope that we're going to find out a lot about this. I already know that Senator Grassley has really been digging into this. Senator Cruz has hopped onto it as well. And so this is something that's going to be interesting to see once the 2022 elections are completed. Okay. So it is now time for, and I got to make sure I'm hitting the right one, questions for whiskey. All right. And tonight's question comes from, let's see, where is she at here? B. Patrick. And I can't remember her. Let's see. Where is it? There it is. 1369, also known as Bonnie. Bonnie says, what year did Congress become judge and jury on American citizens? Just curious, but it seems to be in the last 2 years, they can put people in jail. So Bonnie is basically asking, when did Congress get their powers to be able to go after just regular, average, everyday folks? And, you know, the thing about it is with that, Bonnie, to be honest with you, Congress has things like subpoena power. They have the ability to investigate a wide variety of things that they can do. The question really boils down to how often is that power enforced and how often do they actually use it? So for an example, with the January 6th committee, the reason why a lot of people are saying that it was unconstitutional is because of the fact that it is being driven by more of a criminal proceeding rather than looking into a legislative manner. And not to mention the fact that it is going after someone who is a private citizen, i.e. Donald Trump. The Supreme Court, and unfortunately I could not find the actual case where this is true, but the Supreme Court has ruled in the past that that Congress ideally has to have legislative authority or some type of legislative purpose in order to bring these committees together. Now, as far as the legal ramifications of like a subpoena and, saying that you don't, just not showing up and getting contempt of Congress, those kinds of things fall mostly within the idea of, how are they going to get punished? Because again, Congress by itself is not a law enforcement authority. It is a legislative authority. According to the Constitution, law enforcement falls within the executive branch. And it has been common throughout history that the Supreme Court has essentially said that one branch cannot necessarily step on top of the rights that the Constitution or the tasks, the purposes within the Constitution that are assigned to another legislative or another authority as a part of the Constitution, i.e., Joe Biden can't just automatically say that the EPA is going to have to get that as part of the enforcement arm of the EPA or the executive branch, that the EPA can't just arbitrarily start causing problems with people over CO2 emissions, because they haven't specifically been given purpose for that specific thing as a part of the law that wrote the ability that Congress has passed on to those agencies to be able to go in and do those laws. Same thing with OSHA. OSHA couldn't do the mask mandate, and it was struck down by the Supreme Court for that purpose as well, because the OSHA law, or the law that covered OSHA, did not specifically state that it had anything to do with mask mandates and everything else. It was work, occupational health, and safety, meaning that they couldn't enforce people to wear masks at home or anything like that. So the key here is that typically a congressional committee like, would be brought together, like the Iran-Contra scandal, like the Benghazi issue. It had to deal with the operational and the use of money and legislative tenets and the laws that were possibly broken or not broken. Traditionally, Congress has not convened under some sort of a criminal judgment or criminal proceeding like what you see with January 6th. And so this is part of the reason why people are objecting to January 6th and basically saying that this is an overreach of congressional power. There's no law that has been broken. There's no law that is being evaluated. Therefore, Congress does not have the ability to look into this. Now, the one part where that may not ring true, and which could go against if somebody were to take it to the Supreme Court, one thing that could change that is the fact that Congress is actually in charge, per the Constitution, for the entire 10 square miles of the D.C. area. And so because of that, Congress actually might have some sort of a jurisdiction in this case, but I think it would be a bit of a stretch, to be honest. They would have to kind of prove that in a very interesting way. And it wouldn't put me, honestly, I wouldn't put past John Roberts to basically say that would actually be the situation. But anyway, hopefully I answered your question. It's the Congress is not supposed to be able to go after just regular American citizens. However, what they can do is, if they do something like that they're doing with January 6th, and they find what potentially could be a criminal act, they can refer that over to the DOJ, which is exactly what they're planning on doing. They're going to send it over to Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland, of course, is in the pocket of the Democrats, and so he's probably going to do it whether there was actually any criminal behavior, which there isn't, but whether there was actually any criminal behavior or not, to enforce any kind of particular situation with trying to get Donald Trump to prevent him from getting into office again. And by the way, there's a couple of sites that I was able to find really quick with regards to their subpoena power and that kind of stuff. So I did a little bit of a research for your question. It was a very good question. I do appreciate that. If you'd like to submit a question to Questions for Whiskey, do me a favor. Send me, just drop me a line at fans, FANS, at Whiskey Musings, again, all lowercase, all one word, .online. That's fans, Frank Alpha November Sierra. Sorry, Foxtrot Alpha November Sierra. I got to do this right. At whiskeymusings.online. And you can submit a question for whiskey there. You can also submit your pet picks. You can also submit backgrounds like the one that you see behind me, if you'd like, and you want to see it pop up during the broadcast. I have next week and the week after for the pet stuff, but that was actually the last question in the queue. So I would appreciate it if before Friday of next week that you go ahead and send a question in to me so that I can, do a little brief research and if I don't already know the answer and be able to pop it up. Now, keep in mind the questions, I'm kind of leaving it open, to be honest with you. If you have a specific political question, obviously I'll help you out. If you have any other questions that you might have for me, I will definitely take those as well. I'm kind of leaving it broad open. All right. So that pretty much brings us to the end of the program. Do me a favor. If this is your first time to the program and the first time, seeing the video, go and check out my other videos. If you like them, then do me a favor and subscribe. I love to see subscribers. I love to interact with all of you. I interact on social media. You've been seeing them go by right here. They've been popping up and down here. And we'll see you on Wednesday with that special celebrity pet. We'll see you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Have a great weekend and good night, everybody.